You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just got to run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, run, but I can't stop running because you're not doing it. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life will chase it. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know when you do it, you're going to have to do it all by yourself.
Pause. Right, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of English Live, where we will be looking at active and passive voice. I know it sounds like something complicated and confusing out of a nightmare grammar lesson, but actually it's very simple and it's very useful to know. So I hope that everyone really gets a lot from this short lesson today. But first things first. So there are a few hellos that I would like to give, a few shout outs and some information about how these lessons run if you are brand new to English Live or if you've had a break and you've just come back to me. So a big hello to Violet, who works really hard on all the lessons but is a bit too shy to let her mum post her work in our Facebook group. Well done to you, Violet. Hello to Anya, who is 10 in Bournemouth, who is watching with her dog. Lots of you always talking about your dogs. I love to hear about them. And hello and a shout out to Alex in Harpenden, to Greenleys School, to Pixbrook Academy, to Salma, who is 10 in Leicester, to Tej and Jaya, to Matilda and Alf, who are watching in France with their dog, and Gabby, who is 9, Olivia, who is 11, Dia in Reading, who's age 9, Erin, who's 9 in Birmingham, who always works really, really hard on the lessons, and to Neil in Chelmsford, Ruby, who is 10, Lily, who is 11 in Kenilworth, and to Iksha in Kingston, and Jessica, who is 8, who is watching with her dog, Calvin. So lots of shout outs there. I'm getting better at squeezing them all in. So if this is your first time doing an English Live lesson, after we finish the lesson, you'll be able to download a document that looks a bit like this. There's one for every lesson, and at the moment they're available on my Facebook page, but soon they'll also be available on my website. And there are 6 different tasks that are aimed at all different learning styles and abilities. So there's something for everyone. There's always something that's quite practical, creative, and hopefully it should avoid you feeling like you have to be face down into a worksheet to be able to do any learning from home. Once you've completed these tasks, you can do one or many of them. You can pop photographs of your work or videos, if you're doing the practical ones, on the Facebook group, which is called English Live Resources. Same place you can get this. And we'll give you lots of feedback on them, which is lovely. So, active and passive voice. Well, I've got a starter activity for you that should hopefully get your brain moving. And today's starter activity is a little bit different in that we're going to use the results of it in a task at the end of the lesson. So, what I'm asking you to do today is to write a selection of sentences about your family. And like it says here, we're going to use them at the end of the lesson. So they can be in any structure, in any style. They can be about your siblings, your parents, or things that you do at home, anything you like, okay? I'm going to give you a minute and a half, and I want you just to jot down as many of those as you can, okay? Off you go. Play.
You can't wait to be what you've been told. You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running because you're unrunning. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life is chasing it. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know when you do it, you're gonna have to do it all by yourself.
Pause. Okay, hopefully you've got a few sentences jot down on the paper in front of you, and we will come back to those at the end of the lesson. Okay, we're going to see if we can possibly rewrite those in active and passive voice. So what is active and passive voice? Well, I'm going to try to give you examples, a really simple example, and hope that that will start to clarify for you what we mean by this. So an example of active voice. Oh, wrong one. Here we go. Monkeys adore bananas. Okay, so this is written in an active voice because the subject of the sentence, which is monkeys, it acts upon its verb. So monkeys adore bananas. So if I can try and get two sheets on here, I often try this. It seems to go well. Let's see if we can manage it now. Can you see this? So monkeys are the subject, adore is the verb, and bananas are the object. Okay, so that's active. Now the passive version, okay, is when the subject, which are monkeys, are the recipient of the verb. So we can have exactly the same sentence, but it's structured back to front, if you like. So an example of that would be, here we go, we'll get there. Bananas are adored by monkeys. Okay, so the object, which is bananas, they are adored by monkeys. So the subject is the recipient of the subject's action of the verb. Okay, and just to clarify that, I've broken down what these parts of the sentence are. So bananas are the object. We've got the past participle verbs. That's why I put PP here. But if that's confusing you, don't worry. It's just the verb, and we'll stick with calling it the verb if you want it simplified. The preposition, which is by, and monkeys, the subject of our sentence. Okay, I know this might sound tricky. I'm going to put both examples up so you can jot them down, because I think that will probably be quite helpful for you. So I'll move that. So we've got active voice on the left and passive voice on the right. I'll pop the music on so you can jot it down, and you can also have a little dance to get yourself in the mood if you want to. Okay? Play. Ooh. Pause. Okay, so if you weren't sure, I'm just going to bring in my other resource. For the first one, that was the subject, verb, and object. And in the second one, the passive voice example, we've got, can you see it? I think you can see it. Object, the past participle verb, or just the verb if that confuses you, and a preposition, followed by subject. Okay, so you can also just make a note of that on the page, so you can use that as a reference point when you're doing the task sheets this afternoon. So I've got another example for you. I've got a feeling that you will like this one. Is this an example of passive or active voice? Teenagers play Fortnite. What do you think? Is it passive or active? Well, I'm going to ask you to jot this down, decide whether you think it is active or passive voice, and see if you can label it with subject, verb, and object. Okay, I'm going to give you about 15, 20 seconds to do this. Off you go. Play. Pause. Okay, did you jot it down? Did you work out whether it was active or passive, and were you able to label the words with object, verb, and subject? So the subject of the sentence is teenagers. They play Fortnite. So play is the verb and Fortnite is the object. And we can tell that this is active voice because it's the subject acting upon the object. Can you try and turn this sentence into passive voice? Have a quick go. Okay, I'll pop music on again for another 15, 20 seconds. Jot it down, see if you can write it almost back to front and do it in passive voice. Okay, off you go. Play. Pause. Okay, so clearly I'm not a teenager and I've never played Fortnite in my life, clearly having spelt it wrong directly above the image. If you are talking about 2 weeks, which is a fortnight, that's how it is spelt. But the game, obviously I've spelt it wrong. So maybe I need to go and brush up on my games that teenagers enjoy, or just brush up on Fortnite. Maybe I should download it and have a few games. Right, did you manage to rewrite this sentence with the correct spelling of Fortnite, but in the passive voice? Okay, so who did it right? Adeline, you did it right. Well done. Wow, they're going so quickly. And Albana, you did it right. Well done. Lots of you still telling me that I've spelt it wrong. That's fine. This is absolutely live. And like I always say to you, people make mistakes. People make typos. You just have to correct your mistakes and move on with it. So here is the example of the passive voice if you want to correct your own work. So Fortnite is played by teenagers, okay? So the subject is teenagers and the object is Fortnite. And by reversing it, we make it passive, okay? So the object is acted upon by the subject. So I've got another one for you. This one's a bit trickier. So rather than keeping it to the nice, simple version that we've been looking at, I've added in some different words, okay? Different classification of words. I'm going to leave that there for a moment whilst I say a few hellos. Let you try and get your head around this sentence. So a big shout out to Sam, who is 9 in St Albans, to Sarisha, whose birthday is on Thursday. So happy birthday for Thursday. A big shout out to Rose and everybody at Shottermill Junior School, to Lucy in Nairn, to Ruby and Francis, who are watching in London, to Izzy in Leighton Buzzard, who sent me a lovely picture of her dog, Ivy. Bertie is hoping to bump into her one day. And to Tilly, who is 9 in Hagley, and Amy, who is 8, who is watching with her dog, Coco. Big shout out to all of you. So The dog slowly slurped at the icy water. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do two things with this sentence. I'm going to ask you to decide if you think it's active or passive. And I'm going to ask you to label the words with their different classification. You don't need to do all of them, just the ones that you're familiar with. Okay, so if that's a bit tricky for you, just stick with doing active and passive. If you are able to label the different word classifications, so verb, adverb, adjective, for example, noun, then have a go at doing that. I'm going to give you about 1 minute to do it, and you can jot it down on the page as well. It might be helpful for you. Good luck. Play.
You can't wait to be what you've been called. You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just got to run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running because you're unrunning. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life will chase you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know you can do it, you're going to have to do it all by yourself. Pause. Okay, so did you manage to work out if it was active or passive voice? Can see some of you are popping into the comments. You are right, it's active voice, okay, because the subject is the dog and that comes first, and the dog is acting upon the verb, on its verb. So the dog, that's our object. Slowly is an adverb, so it's a way of describing how a verb is carried out. Slurped is our verb. Icy is an adjective. It's describing the temperature of the water. And the water is the object. Object, subject. Object, yes. Even I'm getting a bit confused here. Okay, so well done if you managed to identify those. That's brilliant. Now I'd like you to try and switch this sentence into the passive. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated because it's got different words in it. It's not just a very simple little sentence. I'm going to give you a minute to do this. If you are watching on catch up, you'll be able to pause if you feel like you need a bit of extra time to complete this. Okay, good luck. Off you go. Play. So you're switching it to the passive, okay?
done, Adeline. You've got it correct again. Well done, Monit. Well done, Ella. Well done, Yogi. Pause. Okay, lots of you got it right, which means either you already knew exactly how to do active and passive voice, or you've learned something this lesson. So that's fantastic news. Everyone's going to go away from here today understanding the active and passive voice. So this is what the passive version of that sentence should look like. So the icy water was slowly slurped by the dog. Okay, so it's almost like I keep saying, doing it back to front. So why do we use active and passive voice? Which is best, and when should you use one and not the other? Well, we're commonly told to use the active voice. Okay, it's clear, it's powerful, it's decisive. And sometimes the passive voice can sound a bit waffly, okay, and weak, and that's to be avoided sometimes in your writing. And I say sometimes because there are times where you can and should use the passive voice. So it depends on what you would like the focus of your writing to be. So this is a really good technique in your creative writing. You don't always need to use the active voice. So for example, if you were writing a story about a dog, maybe Bertie. Bertie, you're going to come and say hello later? He's sat on the sofa where he shouldn't be sat with his tongue hanging out. You might say, the dog chased the squirrel. Okay, so that would be active voice. But if you were writing a story about squirrels or about nature, you might put, the squirrel was chased by the dog. So it changes the focus, and that's a technique you can use in your writing. Okay, whether you use active or passive voice can change the focus of the reader's attention. Okay, so there are times where you can use the passive voice. So what I would like you to do now, we're coming towards the end of the lesson, I'd like you to return to those sentences you wrote in the starter activity. I'll put the sheet back up on the board if you came to the lesson late. What I would like you to do is decide if your sentences are in the active or passive voice, and if you are able to switch them. Okay, so you should have two different structures for the same content, sentence content. Okay, so that's what we did as our starter activity. I'd like you to go back to those sentences and see if you can rewrite them. If you want to, pop them into the comments. I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to have a quick practice doing that with your own sentences. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to write it down, you can just talk about it with your siblings or your parents and see if you can come up with some sentences about your family using both voices. Okay, good luck, off you go. Play.
You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just gotta run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dreams just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know when you do it, you're gonna have to do it all by yourself.
pause. So hopefully you've got a few of your own examples. Hi Jess, you've been watching every single lesson. Hope you have enjoyed them. So a few shout outs before we tie up this lesson. So big hello to Emma, who is watching with her dog George, Jessica, who's watched every lesson, Tula, who is 10 in Kent, who's watching with her fat cat, to Adia in Plymouth in Devon, and to Betsy and another Bertie who are watching in Rugby. Thank you all for joining in the lesson today. Hello to Amy in the USA. Lots of people saying hello to Bertie. No, he's not a boxer, he's an English bulldog. Just looking into the comments here. Hello, Louis in Kent. So hopefully you feel a little bit more confident in writing in the active and passive voice, and you have a good idea of when it's appropriate to use the two different ways of structuring a sentence. Okay, there are loads of fantastic tasks for you to do today that you can find in the English Live resources group. Some of them are practical, or use your current reading book for you to explore rewriting sentences and the effect that that might have. But if you prefer, if you just need a bit of a confidence builder, just download a worksheet off the internet and just give it a bit of a practice, okay? Things like this, it's all about practice. So please don't forget, I've got a letter writing competition this week that you can enter. There's information on my Facebook page. The deadline is Thursday, and I will be announcing the winners in my VE Day special on Friday. So I'm doing a VE Day special spellathon. All of the words are VE Day themed, and there'll be poetry readings, competition results, and generally we're going to have a bit of a VE Day themed session. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for war poetry, Wednesday for Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Thursday for powerful punctuation, and of course the special on Friday. Have a lovely afternoon, enjoy your learning. Enjoy the drier weather from home if you can, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. So from me and Bertie, bye-bye. Play.